I didn't get counseling. You know what I did? I bought more guns, and I went right back to the streets. And there's a point system in the streets. So you catch a body, or somebody else catches a body. Now somebody wants to catch your body, and then they get the ranking. So now you barely made it out with your life, but now you become one of the biggest targets.
It's amazing to me because the life you described is going on right now while we're having lunch.
Yes.
And we get to choose what side of Dallas we want to see, or Atlanta, or Chicago, or Memphis, or Illinois. But right now, while we're talking, somebody's getting shot in this city right this minute. Somebody's doing a drug deal right this minute. Maybe a 13-year-old is being abducted right this minute, and trafficked right this minute. And we choose what parts of our cities we want to see by the highways we get on, and the highways make it convenient for us to drive past the pain. But for the people who are stuck in between the highways, they can't drive past the pain. And what you described to me is trauma without treatment. It's agony without antidote. It's the kind of thing that stays with you all your life. And what I wanted, you did exactly what I wanted to do, was to show that you can be healed and still have scars. You understand?
You know what's funny? You ever see those commercials and they showing, you know, and they do it as propaganda, right? Because Africa's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
But they show you with the kids and the bloated bellies,
Yeah.
and the first thing you want to do is change the channel. Or if you see a St. Jude's commercial and you're looking at the kids and they're battling, you want to change the channel. That's what Bishop was describing, how we take certain routes so that we don't have to see the true condition of reality. But there's nothing more dangerous than convincing yourself of a lie. There's a lot of young men and women out there in the streets that are going through what they go through in Syria and Iraq, but they do not get the treatment, they do not get the compassion, there are no set-asides. And again, society is so quick to punish us for our condition, but what we're talking about is how do we go and deal with the cause. I said it earlier, and I would like to be able to regurgitate it. 90% of us who either did time, spent years on probation, or were caught up in the judicial system, we were incarcerated mentally before we ever got sentenced. But the condition is always profitable, whether it's big pharma, whether it's defense attorneys, whether it's prison systems, the condition is profitable, but we gotta find ways to collaborate to deal with the cause.
You know, when you think about that, we have earlier, our director was talking about TORI surviving COVID and how difficult it was, not only for TORI, but for the Potter's House, for the city, for the nation, for the world, was affected by COVID. And even those of us that did not catch the virus, we did have to ingest the isolation. And the effects of the isolation was devastating. But 2 years of isolation does not compare to people born in impoverished neighborhoods who live 20 and 30 years in isolation behind invisible walls that lead to visible walls, and you just change one prison for another prison for another prison. Are there any ways in your life now, free as you are, not in isolation, not on probation, because most of yours was probation, are there any residues, little freaky things that you don't like because that make you nervous, that trigger you?
Good question.
Last week was my first week from Monday to Friday that I did not experience anxiety.
That you didn't what?
That I did not experience intense anxiety.
Okay.
From being in so many shootouts, from being around so much violence, the treatment that comes from being a felon on the job site at times, the things that we have to overcome, I had severe anxiety, and the therapist told me you have a hyper sense of survival. That doesn't work good inside of a marriage.
No.
That doesn't work good inside of trying to redeem your son and your relationship. That does not make you a good leader, and you're in a position of a great deal of leadership. So yes, the residues can still be there. Therapy is a great tool. Talking about it with another, previously incarcerated person is a good tool. Journaling is a good tool, but the greatest tool of all is being honest with yourself. I try to force myself into so many atmospheres and environments to prove that I was something, instead of realizing I already was something, that inflamed my anxiety, that made me very, very sensitive and ready to pop. So for those who are going back home and you're welcoming them back home, it takes a certain level of sensitivity and patience. It's not personal, it's internal. And I always say transformation first begins in the heart and the mind before it can be expressed outwardly. And it takes time. I got shot at the age of 16, I'm 42, and I just had my first, Bishop, I could be driving to a movie and feel anxiety. I could be sitting there watching a movie with my wife and my shoulders are tense and my neck is locked up because of the trauma that I've experienced in my life. So yeah, there's still moments living the red carpet life, sitting on the house on the hill, only black people in the community, where I can still be out there going to my mailbox feeling anxiety. But I had to let some things go.
Go ahead.
I finally just realized I'm not at war anymore.
You know, you took the words right out of my mouth, because the PTSD that you're describing is common amongst veterans. Because they lived in war zones all their lives. But in a lot of ways, you lived in a war zone too, internally and externally, that didn't give you the option to choose to be smart or brilliant, because that wasn't cool. And you couldn't survive in the jungle you were in being a nice boy.
Bishop, when I was young, I loved poetry, I loved math, I loved writing. I used to love writing in literature class, but I couldn't share that with my soldiers. They want to play Xbox all day and Call of Duty and Madden. I suck at Madden. My son beat me in John Madden so bad at the age of 6 years old, I never picked up a video game again. And I'm being completely honest. I realize it's not my calling. But at the end of the day, I love words. I understand the power of words, that it can build, that it can destroy. But when you're in the hood, it's, you know what I'm saying, and filling everything in with cuss words, I didn't feel safe in my intellectualism inside of the streets. So I basically buried who I truly was just so I wouldn't be ostracized among a group that's already ostracized.
So what that says to me is that we're not just trying to change lives, we need to change a culture. The entire culture of the system does not allow you the freedom where smart is celebrated, where being a father is celebrated, where having a family is celebrated. It's not like men slap each other on the back for being good dads or coming home at night or being monogamous or being faithful. To the contrary, we are applauded more for infidelity than we are for fidelity. We are applauded more for how many women we have than the women that we didn't. We are applauded more for being some baby daddy that we don't pay them. In that situation, you're not applauded for being good, so you hid your better self and repressed him. Is he out now?
Oh, he's out here. Oh, he's out here. The reason why I'm excited about going into the schools is because I was the type of guy, Bishop, that I got my homework done before class was over. I was a very intelligent kid. But nobody said, hey, maybe let's put him in honors. Let's put him in coding, all these beautiful things we have today. So when a young mind is not challenged, he'll find a challenge. And what I've learned over the time of doing this work is society is very quick to celebrate a man or a woman for their right hemisphere. Sing, dance, act, athletics, all of that good stuff. But we're running into a society that does not celebrate thinking men.
So there might be people who graduated today who are still struggling to show their best self.
Because sometimes you have to choose, can I be brilliant? Sometimes the choice is to be brilliant or to fit in.
Right.
And will I be okay with my knowledge? Because there were many days I felt stupid, foolish, that I was so misunderstood. It took me too long to realize I'm just thinking on a different plane and a level that you're thinking on. And I forced myself and I done my whole, almost forfeit my destiny in my life, as you said, because if I'd have died that night, I wouldn't be married, I wouldn't be a father, just to fit in with a group of people who are still on the same block in the same corner that I left them on 15 years ago. I know exactly where to go find them. So don't compromise the potential that you have in this event. And I'm gonna say this. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna say this. The one thing that is deprived, especially in our community with young boys, and forgive me, I deal with men. I don't believe I can teach a woman. I believe the best way to protect them is by helping build men of good character, right? That's our contribution, because I go around the country, they say, well, what are you gonna do for us? This is what I'm doing for y'all, right? When there's no rite of passage, that signifies the closing of one door and the entering into another, you'll still be in the new door trying to prove the old thing. By that I mean, because I was never really ushered into manhood, I was a full-grown man still trying to prove I was a man, because I didn't have a cutoff. I say that to say, this ceremony is very important because you have to let go of the former. Yes, you did some time, or yes, you were penalized, or yes, you suffered. But the cap and gown is to signify that that thing is over so that you don't take a survival mentality. Please do not take a survival mentality into the world, because survival and success cannot coexist. One has to end and the next has to begin, because a survival mentality will rob you of your creativity and you will create self-sabotaging behaviors. So this cap and gown ceremony that they have lavishly laid out for you is more important for you to seal and close the door to it's not about forgetting, don't forget. But don't use it as a crutch, don't use it as a weapon, and don't use it as an excuse, because you're now entering into a new dimension.